10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, wrestling fans, and welcome to the Wrestle Talk Podcast. For the next 2 hours, we will bring you the latest pro wrestling news, in-depth analysis of all your favorite promotions from across the globe, and much, much more. We will also bring you exclusive interviews with the greatest professional wrestling personalities on the local, national, and international levels. If you want to follow the Wrestle Talk Podcast, check us out online at www.wrestletalkpodcast.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And now, it's time for the reigning, defending, undisputed leader in pro wrestling podcast, the Wrestle Talk Podcast.
Good evening once again, Wrestle Talk Podcast family. It is episode 510 of the illustrious Wrestle Talk Podcast. Your host and soon-to-be co-host, approaching us here in a moment, Gabriel Arsen, your Warriors Heart champion, here with all the latest news in the world of professional wrestling. And we have an amazing guest lined up here tonight. Eddie Page, just to show this here from Wrestling Empire, will be our fantastic guest here in the second hour of the Wrestle Talk Podcast. And I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, it is great to be back. But as always, I cannot do this here alone. And if he is ready, I would like to introduce my co-host here tonight, the one, the only, Luke Skywalker Roberts.
All right. You know something, Arsen? I'm going to tell you right now, tonight is going to be a great episode of the podcast. And you know what? Hopefully, and I know I'm jinxing us from the very beginning, but the technology gremlins are going to stay away because, as you well aware, it's now preseason baseball time. And again, when you're talking about professional baseball, you're also talking about the time, little thing called the road to WrestleMania. And I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of people said that this year, as you talk about your Warriors Heart Championship, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit as well. But you know something that's interesting? I'm going to tell you right now, and we're going to talk a little more about this in high spots. I'm going to level with you right now. This road to WrestleMania had about 19 different twists and turns from the Elimination Chamber. And we're going to talk a lot about that in hour number one in the high spot segment. But Arsen, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not the only thing that's going to be in there. We've got some interesting news to talk about in the world of AEW. We've also got a lot to talk about, some new input, some things that have recently been published by the wonderful world of the National Wrestling Alliance. Want to give a shout out also to our great friends over at Duke City Championship Wrestling, or as some people now know them as NWA New Mexico. Make it a point to check them out. One of the newest affiliates to the National Wrestling Alliance. A shout out to all those great folks over there. And again, we had Sally Taylor on, I believe it was a couple of weeks ago. And again, great interview, a lot of positive feedback. And again, as a reminder, as you see on the screen here in moments, remember, make sure to put those hashtags out there. Hashtag WTP, hashtag Let's Talk Wrestling. You can put hashtag, a couple other ones that aren't on the screen right now. You can talk about hashtag Universe Mania, because I know that's going to be coming up here soon. You can talk about hashtag Road to WrestleMania. You can talk about hashtag Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Make it a point to share your hashtags. Share this show with everybody you know, because again, we're episode 510. You don't know too many podcasts that could say that they have such a storied history as the Wrestle Talk Podcast. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of great things that are on the horizon. Arsen, I'm going to ask you, man, right now here in the St. Louis area, it's gotten back to Feels like about February right now here in our area. How are things going down there in the wonderfully warm Sunshine State?
Funnily enough, it's actually a pretty cool temperature here. I'm actually in favor of it because I don't like the heat all that much, because it's a very specific kind of heat here. It gets humid as hell and hot, and it's like I know there's going to be plenty of people out in other parts here in the U.S. that'll want to fight me on that, but for me, I like when it's kind of mellow out here. So thankfully, it's not blisteringly cold, but it's just cold enough to where I can rock with the hoodie.
Well, you know something, Arsen? I'm going to put this out here right now as I'm looking at things here. Have you ever heard there's been several comedians that'll say, oh, but it's a dry heat? I'm going to tell you right now, if you've ever been in Florida.
Exactly the comedian you're talking about, too.
Oh, yeah, it's quite an experience if you've ever had the opportunity to go down to Florida and experience the Florida time. I mean, again, also on a personal note, want to give a shout out. I've got a couple of members of my own family that are down in the Villages, and I know they're getting, like I said, they're getting ready to hopefully make the journey up to the Hall of Fame in June, on June 22nd. And again, a lot of great things going on in the local scene, a lot of great things going on the national scene. And again, as you went, let's bring it up one more time before we get too much farther along and talk about the sponsors. Yes, you have that hardware that you like to carry around everywhere you go, just so you can get one more time to get it on camera before we get things rolling tonight. The Warriors Heart Championship. And again, as you see there, FWWC, the world's premier fantasy wrestling group. You can catch them on. Yeah, you can see. I mean, again, it's all listed on the belt and it's all ready to rock and roll. Now, before we get started here this evening, I want to go ahead and take just a minute and talk about all of our great sponsors, without who the Wrestle Talk podcast does not exist on a weekly basis. And again, I want to give a big shout out to them as we go along here, because without the Wrestle Talk podcast sponsors, that's another key part of the Wrestle Talk podcast family. As a matter of fact, you're going to see them coming across the screen here. That's all right. We forgot Lord Alfred Hayes. I mean, again, we do have to make it a point that we have things taken care of here. You've got Retro Zone, you got Painter Stream Productions, home of the one, the only Big Daddy P, the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. If you want to purchase tickets for the event on Sunday, June 22nd, make sure to contact them online. Interstate 70 Sports Media, home of the Maestro Jeremy Karp. Little Popeye Designs, home of those limited edition Wrestle Talk podcast tumblers. And, of course, the FWWC, the world's premier fantasy wrestling group. Now, right now, as we look at things here right now, I'm going to tell you, Arsen, it's been a very busy time in the world of pro wrestling. And it's been a very busy time here at the Wrestle Talk Podcast. We got a lot of great guests coming on the program. A couple of them I'm very much looking forward to. And again, just want to let people know. And again, this is a little thing here. I believe the last time that you and I were online together, we were supposed to have Joe Dombrowski from MLW on the program. Due to circumstances beyond our control, that wasn't able to happen, but we have been in communication with MLW, and it is our understanding that in 2 weeks, on Tuesday, March 18th, Joe Dombrowski will be on the Wrestle Talk podcast. Make it a point to follow us on social media. We just want to let you know that we have been working diligently to make sure that we can make that interview happen. And again, on Tuesday, March 18th, Joe Dombrowski, MRW. But matter of fact, Arsen, you are the resident MLW correspondent. Correct me if I'm wrong here. We're going to be days away at that point from Battle Riot. Am I correct?
Yes, we are. I'm actually quite excited. They're making a lot of announcements, a lot of people throwing their hats in the ring, and Matt Riddle, the King of Bros, has his work cut out for him, because Battle Riot, compared to most, I believe, is actually a 40-man battle royale. It's still over the top rope, but this is one of the first times in MLW history where the MLW World Heavyweight Championship will be on the line. And I have a sneaking suspicion when Eric Bischoff is going to make sure that Matt Riddle is going to be coming in at number one. So he's got quite a lot on his plate to try and take care of. But I think if anybody's got the hunger for it, it's the original bro, Matt Riddle.
Well, you know something, Arsen, I've got my own input, and we're going to talk about that before High Spots. But before we get too much farther along, I'm going to go ahead and you know something, I talked to a very good friend of ours, that being the one, the only Nightmare Jones, Joe Lance. And he told me that when it comes to the next thing that we have to take care of, we do each and every broadcast here on the Wrestle Talk podcast, that you, sir, have really kind of followed in the proud tradition of One Nightmare Jones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to remove my hat, and I'm going to go ahead and let you take care of a little piece of business that we do each and every week right here on the Wrestle Talk podcast. So Arsene, the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, thank you kindly, Skywalker. As always, we would not be able to do what we do here if it wasn't for the place where we live. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest country on God's green earth, because we would like everybody in attendance to remove your caps, place your hands over your hearts, and pay tribute to the greatest country, that is the United States of America, damn it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what's there, and I'm going to tell you right now, there are several members of the Wrestle Talk podcast family that enjoy that each and every time we bring that out there. Again, we're seeing all the running commentary here on the program this evening. But again, as my broadcast colleague has said, without all of the great men and women who defend this country each and every day for us, all the great first responders, the EMTs, the fire, the police officers, all those individuals who help make our country go each and every week. We do salute you for all the hard work you do. And you know something, Arsene, there's a lot of people, especially in these last few weeks, that are really having to step up their game. And I said, before we go to high spots, I have a prediction. And I'm going to call it right on the carpet. Arsene, you are a fibber, a king-size fibber.
This is a bold accusation, sir.
You want to know why? You say that the original bro, Matt Riddle, is going to come out to the Battle Riot numero uno. I'm going to tell you right now, he's not. My prediction, to keep with keeping controversy, he's going to come out numero dos.
I see. Well, we will find out.
Gotcha, everybody. Gotcha.
Who the bigger fibber is when that time comes. But
well, you know something, and I'm going to throw this out here right now. We're going to go ahead here in just a minute. And I actually have, and we're not going to hit the sounder because this is extremely important, what I'm going to share here in just a few moments. But as you know, we are introduced each week by a great member of the Wrestle Talk podcast family, the one, the only DJ Money. So what I'm going to do, Arsene, if you would be so kind, we need to get into high spots. But before we do, I want to go ahead and let people know that I've got some information I want to share with the Wrestle Talk podcast family here in just a few moments. So let's go ahead and hit that wonderful high spots intro so I can go ahead and get things taken care of. It's the high spots on the Wrestle Talk podcast. Take it away.
Mic check. Yeah. All right. Wrestle Talk podcast. DJ Money. Yeah. Let's go. Welcome to High Spots, where we pop news like lamb chops. We talk shop, coming through the screens of a laptop and non-stop like a running speakers of blacktop. We hit hard like chair shots and backdrops, like a spark flash, look like a barely fly. Now that's hard. We up the steam while they stay slow. Wrestle Talk podcast, now they know we about to start the show.
You know something, Arsene, as we're looking at all these wonderful, great graphics of things, you know, that kind of, it really kind of fits pretty perfect there. in the idea that the way everything sets up. I mean, again, those great graphics of all of our sponsors, having the graphic of Eddie Page, all those things, and really kind of fit in with tempo. And I thought it was really, really cool of how that was all done. Now, I said that I wanted to share a little piece of information, and I want to go ahead here real quick. And I'm trying my best to get things up. And again, on the computer, technology is great when it cooperates. But again, at least it's not our technology. At least it's not the problems with the Wrestle Talk podcast. We've been doing real good here tonight with that. But I have heard on very good authority, as you know, DJ Money, well known. He's an ambassador for Fighting for Autism. He's a entrepreneur. He runs his own business in the great state of Georgia. But I was made aware, and I'm going to try to find this here later on in the program too, see if we can actually get a graphic up maybe an hour or two. But I was on a very good notice. I mean, again, a lot of people in the wrestling community, wrestlers like DDP, Buff Bagwell, among others, have been retweeting and sharing information on Bryant Hill. And I have on good authority that right now they have been communicating with the Neiman Marcus Corporation about the idea of taking their product on a much larger scale. And I'm going to give you this. If you are in the great state of Georgia, the Peach State, as many are aware, you need to make it a point to check out Bryant Hill. Like I said, they're longtime friends of the show. And again, not only that, you can have a great time to talk wrestling with DJ Money, a lot of great stuff. But I wanted to give a shout out on that because of the fact that, I mean, that's a big deal. And I know that his family's taken a lot of huge risks to get things done, and to make sure that's done and taken care of really is a huge deal. Matter of fact, here, we're going to go ahead here and I'm going to level with you, Arsene. I think the first one, I really don't think that we need to do the randomizer, because as a wise man,
what questions on everybody's mind in the world of professional
well,
wrestling.
no, we're not going to talk about a question per se. I think we're going to talk about the idea. Again, I used it. I believe the two-time Hall of Famer, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, has said this. If you haven't heard by now, do you live under a rock? Have you not been able to follow pretty much every outlet of social media that's out there? And before we even get that far, Arsene, I want you to go ahead, if you would be so kind, and just throw up the high spots graphic, just so people can be aware of what we're talking about. You see it right here.
Just let that marinate for a minute.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, again, when you look at this here, this is something that no one, I mean, we had heard rumblings and grumblings, and I was actually watching the WWE Raw last night. And you got to take it with a grain of salt, because it is the WWE marketing department and the internet department. They said, if I'm not mistaken, in the span of 36 hours, I believe, it was in the top 3 for most downloaded or viewed statements in the history of WWE social media. I mean, that's just unreal.
And I want to say that's up there. Do we know what the other ones are besides like cancel WWE?
Well, you know, and I'm not trying to downplay it by any stretch, because I think it was very much needed. I know one of them that was there wasn't necessarily a video per se, but I know one of them was probably up there was a hashtag Give Divas a Chance. Another one, the Occupy Raw segment with a Daniel Bryan. But when you sit down and you look at it, it's it's one of those things where this has been a huge deal. And we're going to pull the graphic back up here in just a minute or two. But I want to go ahead before we get too far along. Let's go ahead and throw up the first question. Let's not put the graphic up yet. We'll leave the question up here. Okay. But let's throw the first question. Does John Cena's actions at the Elimination Chamber rival Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach? I'm going to tell you right now, I was at a live event for Dynamo Pro this past weekend. The Dynamo Pro event was literally ending. And I was backstage in my role. And from my position, you could just see it was like when one person's alerts went off, it was just like wave. And there were people, I mean, it was like people had said that, they just couldn't believe that the man known for hustle, loyalty, and respect, the man known for all of the Make-A-Wish appearances, of everything that John Cena has done for the fans of the WWE. And to go to those extremes, I'm going to tell you right now, here's my view, and then Arsene, you're going to have your minute. I think on one hand, it was just as shocking as the Hogan, because nobody knew. I mean, people had a few rumblings and grumblings. They had seen what was going on. But I honestly feel this one has a life of its own, because John Cena basically left Cody Rhodes, literally by putting his foot on the back of his head. He busted him open. He tore basically the top half of his clothes off. He beat him up. A lot of people don't understand. Yeah, it was a watch. But again, that's still a piece of metal wrapped around your fist.
I want to see how many people can take a straight punch to the face with a wristwatch on top of that. Okay, like we're not going to sneeze at that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and it's one of those things here. When it comes down to it, I think when it just comes to the gut reaction, I think they're the same. But I think when you talk about the physicality aspect of it, I say it's even bigger. And again, when you look at it, the time periods there, and again, it was just. And before I give it to your scene, pop it up one more time. Pop up that graphic one more time for this question. We got to throw that one up. We can leave the question up there on the screen, but you got to pop up the graphic right there. When you see that reaction when he's hugging Cody Rhodes, and you see that face and the lack of expression, I got to tell you, I don't know what that man would do. And I'll tell you right now, we have heard basically nothing from John Cena. I think he had one post yesterday. And while you're looking at it, I'm going to see if I can pull that direct statement. But Arsene, I'm going to give it to you. I want to see if I can find, pardon me. I want to see if I can find that statement from John Cena. I think it was on Twitter or X. Sorry, a little behind the times. It's X, it's not Twitter. But I want to go ahead and give it to you when it relates to this question, Arsene. What are your views on this?
A lot of people are going to be mad at what I have to say here tonight, but it must be said. I not only think that his actions at the Elimination Chamber rival Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach, I think they far exceed them. And I say this as a C Nation fan since day zero. I want everybody watching this to understand that I was the epitome of a Cena fan. I was the right age graphic. He had just won the championship. I was watching Raw when he was feuding with Edge. And then every single time I came back into wrestling, Cena was still doing what Cena does best. I had just taken a break from it. I had returned around 2012, right at the time when he was feuding with Miz and won the championship after WrestleMania 27, the huge feud with The Rock, where at the time, I'll be honest, I was on Cena's side. I wasn't crazy about Rocky. And proceeded to see the Summer of Punk and everything that followed with it, and persisted as long as I did after the fact when I got back into 2016 and was saying, man, Cena's great. It's good to see him after the US Open Challenge, challenging AJ Styles in a huge money match, and all these losses actually matter to something. To see this man develop to the person he is, to see all the trials and tribulations, the peaks and valleys of people loving him, hating him, loving to hate him, and hating to love him, to finally come back around full circle to the person that he was for this final last hurrah of a run. And then to stab every single one of us in the back, whether you saw it coming, whether you didn't saw it coming. We are going to be talking about this moment for the next decade. I swear to you. And I want everybody to understand, this is not any kind of sour grapes that I have regarding Hulk Hogan. Whether you want to drop it and separate the art from the artist, everything that he did, you want to separate it from the person, I still stand that Cena's heel turn was done better. And here's my case, because I'm going to have a lot of people wondering, like, oh, how do you defend that? How do you defend that? I defend that because, to me, for Hogan, when you look at his career as a whole, especially at that point in time, I feel like people knew it was coming. And more so than they knew when Cena's was coming. Because how many people at the time were not on Hogan's side? A lot. A lot. Like, this man was getting Cena heat before Cena heat was a thing. And one of the biggest things about that moment, because it is an iconic moment in wrestling, the thing that always kills me about that scene is Bobby Heenan on commentary screaming, whose side is he on? He's setting the seeds of doubt for everybody to go, okay, he's probably doing this. So for me, I would rather have the cinematography, because everything about the way they handled this moment, and I'm going to try to wrap this up so we can move on to our next question, because I could write a whole college thesis about how much I love this moment. But to see John Cena in the Elimination Chamber locking in that STF, where all of us know it's not right, but you know what? It's Cena, and he's going to take the opportunity for what it is, screaming to CM Punk, I'm sorry, as Seth Rollins is on the outside of the cage screaming, die, die. You can't write that shit down. And then to proceed it and follow it with Cody dropping an honest-to-God F-bomb on an elimination pay-per-view, to the hug, to the final moments, those last few seconds where you are peering, and I'm going to pull this back up because I want everybody to look at the death stare this man has, because we've been seeing him smiling for the past couple of months. When you stare into the abyss, and that abyss is John Cena, and he's staring right back, you blink. And we didn't miss it, folks. We didn't miss it. So to summarize, yes, I think they rival Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach, and I will not have anybody discussing me in this otherwise.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm just going to throw some one-liners out here, just from your commentary. One, are we going to see this for a long time? And number two, would you classify this as not John Cena heat, but would you classify this in an Xbox kind of heat?
No. I don't want to put those two in the same area.
Well, when we sit here and we look at it, I mean, that is a great point of view. I mean, John Cena has done so much for the wrestling industry. And now to see this, I mean, one thing I got to say, though, when it comes down to it, is this just instantly gives us a monumental amount of credibility now. Whether the people want to talk trash about it or not, I mean, give you this thought here. When you get the 16-time world heavyweight champion, the 2-time Hall of Famer himself, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, saying that he's going to find a way, if it means showing up and doing what he can to stop John Cena from becoming a 17-time world heavyweight champion, you know you've done fired up the wrong people. But I will tell you this, though, and this is food for thought. If Cena does become a 17-time world champion at WrestleMania, the question is, how long is he champion? Do we see something like Daniel Bryan, where he'll be champion until somebody pins him or makes him submit? Number 2, do we see something to the event where we see kind of like WrestleMania 4, where he retires as champion? Is that something we see? Do we see not that it hasn't already been a meteoric rise of the American Nightmare, but do we see the monumental Part 2 rise of Cody Rhodes finally ending the legacy, the legend that is John Cena? There are so many, and again, you know what this has done too, Arsene, and nobody has talked about this. This has now once again put a roadblock between Cody Rhodes and The Rock.
Roadblock is a bit of an understatement.
And you know, speaking which, I believe there is an NXT event called Roadblock on the way to WrestleMania. So we'll go from there. All right, now that we've taken about 15 minutes or so. Oh, and by the way, I got to put this out there just because I told the Night Owl I would do this. One more time, throw up that graphic. I'm sorry, that just creeps people out. Let's throw it up there one more time. There you go. We promise no more John Cena graphic here tonight. No more John Cena graphic, because that's just a little too much.
I will say, just before we move on, only because this heel turn is solidified and we haven't really heard anything from him. First of all, I just want to throw this out there. This man was still taking Make-A-Wishes before he started wrestling that night. The level of commitment. But the number one thing I want to see, and I'm sure it's in development. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't really know what they have planned. But for those of you that haven't seen it, I absolutely recommend it. Seen it. But I recommend for those of you who have or haven't, look into it. Cena was originally supposed to turn heel back in 2012, like right about the time that he was feuding with Punk. And they had came up with a new slogan, and they've already recorded a new theme song. I want everybody to see if they can find it on YouTube, because it should still be there. If they dust that song off and he comes back with that, and they bring back the old mantra that they were going to use, I want everybody to hear this, because this is cold as ice. John Cena is going to be coming in and saying, "Fear my name."
Well, you know something? You mentioned we need to see if anybody has seen it. That's going to be my whole thing this whole show now, Arsene. You set me up. Anytime you want to make sure that if you've had an opportunity, and we want to give a big shout out to those that have never seen the Wrestle Talk podcast before. And we're going to stop doing that for now, because no one our luck, somebody from a large promotion up in Stamford, Connecticut, may be sending us some messages on that one, but that's okay. Now, let's go ahead. Let's hit the randomizer. Let's get something else up here, because I know there's more than just John Cena in the world of professional wrestling. There's a lot of great, interesting information here. So let's go ahead and hit the randomizer, Arsene. Let's see what else we got tonight. All right, let's go ahead and see what our next question is from the handy dandy randomizer. Ooh, another great question here. As you know, that is Phoenix. And as we see here, according to AEW's website, Phoenix is no longer on their roster. Does he go? And again, we got to get to a point. We talked to those guys in the IT department. Does he go to the WWE? And if so, when? Now, while we go ahead and make sure that we can get a nice little discussion about proper spelling for our IT department, and Arsene, if you'd be so kind, if you could go ahead and fix that. We're going to make sure the IT guys, and yes, we know you're listening. Thank you. Also, a shout out to those that are listening and sharing our podcast tonight with all of your friends and family and so on and so forth. You know, if this would have happened, I think actually a lot of people were saying something very similar to this with one Ricky Saints. And for the record, I'm not going to call him Ricky Saints. I remember back very early in his career when he would come to promotions like St. Louis Anarchy. I think it's one of those situations where a lot of people were saying that Tony Khan messed up. I think so. But the thing is, I think Tony Khan waited because he didn't want him to make that surprise appearance at the Rumble and have that being talked about. But this opens the door. And again, I think Tony Khan made another big oops because now realistically, that gives Phoenix about 2 months to sit down, to acclimate. And my gut feeling, I think we see Phoenix like Penta on the main roster the night after WrestleMania. Arsene, your thoughts?
Just want to throw this on here real quick just because it popped up before I could say anything. And I have a sneaking suspicion I know what this is about, but we're done talking about John Cena, so I won't get into it. But to answer the question, honestly, I'm with you when you say that Tony Khan sort of, I think it honestly, he shot himself in the foot in the sense that by not letting him go as soon as he could, he's building up anticipation because now we're all waiting for Phoenix. And if anything, now that Penta's there, it's even more of a guaranteed thing. We're getting the Lucha Bros. I think that's fair to assume, right?
Hold up. I'm going to stop you right there. Do we get the Lucha Bros? Or do we get the rivalry that we saw in Lucha Underground?
Well, it's funny you talk about Lucha Underground because I'm sure there's a bit of a development that's been in regards to that.
Well, you know something I'm saying, and I'm just going to level with you. I've actually gotten on good authority from several different media outlets. So that's nothing more than a hoax. So we're going to kind of hold off on that one. But again, what you're looking at now is simple. You're looking at things from a perspective of where are we going to go? One thing I will say is this, and I don't know if it was a ploy by Phoenix. It was a ploy by people that are close to Phoenix. He kind of made some less than flattering comments on his way out. And I think that may come back to haunt him. Now, I know that you're a huge fan of the Lucha Bros. I know that yourself, like our broadcast colleague, the Night Owl, was very much a follower of Lucha Underground. My question here, and I'm going to let you go ahead and continue, but this does kind of like our last topic. This really kind of has a lot of interesting pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and let it go back to you, Arsene, because I know you still have more you want to continue with.
Well, to answer your question as to whether or not we're going to have them together or separate, I think it's going to be a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I think the potential for both of them to be single stars and feuding with each other would be great, but I think they need to save it. I think that is very much a back pocket sort of thing, because if we're going to have another feud specifically between brothers, and we all know that those have been pretty hit and miss in WWE, I think they need to save it for something down the line so both men can be established so that they can eventually get that, moment to happen between the two of them. But also, I think they stand to gain more from both of them as a team because they were best known as a team in the last place that they worked in. And they've honestly just been known as a team for a majority of their careers. So in the line of WWE as well, their tag team roster, while not bad, definitely needs a couple of playmakers going forward. You know, I'm not to try and undersell who we have currently. You know, I love DIY, love the Viking experience. I love
War Raiders.
War Raiders.
War Raiders.
Okay,
You're letting them get away with that now.
Okay, just wanted to clarify if they changed it back. I'm not sorry. But, you know, I feel like we do have a couple of numbers and names there. But I think if you could add the Lucha Bros to that mix, if you could add that style that we know them for, especially given the amount of marquee matches that we can have here, you put them in a ladder match with any tag team in the WWE. Honest to God, 4 stars easy. And I think that's what they stand to gain. And again, I think they should save it for down the line for a breakup, because those two can go, and they have feuded before. But before we jump into our next high spots question, since you were the one who brought this up, did we want to take an opportunity to sort of talk about what we've heard through the grapevine as far as Lucha Underground in the world of professional wrestling and WWE as it stands?
Well, I want to throw something else out there too, and I'm going to kind of follow. It's like a rumor / follow up. The rumor that we've heard, and a lot of people have heard, is the idea that the WWE has purchased the majority of all of the licensure catalog, the whole to-do of Lucha Underground. Now, I've heard in the course of the last 2-3 hours that it's been nothing more than lie, rumor, trying to get people frustrated, trying to mix things up. If they did, great. I think it'd be a huge thing. But there's something else that we're going to talk about. Again, it's weird how all of our high spots could very easily tie together. And it really is. But here is my question. And I just want to throw this one at you. And I've heard a few people talk about this one too. With everything that's going on as of late, and again, you have Dragon Lee, Joaquin Wilde, I think now Cruz del Toro. Do we possibly see some form of an alliance or rivalry or something of the sort with the Lucha Bros and members of the LWO?
I'm torn. I'm torn only because I like what they've been doing with the LWO as far as what they're doing and the people that they have involved, and that they're actually having opportunities to compete. And I think the idea on paper works, but I don't know how much I want to see it. I feel like when you throw all of this, you know, Latin American talent under the same umbrella, it almost does the opposite effect. I feel like it sort of paints them all as, well, they're all part of the LWO, so that's it. And they don't get their own leg to stand on. And to me, somebody like the Lucha Bros or even Dragon Lee by himself, I think they have the potential to stand on their own, whatever decision they decide to make as far as where their career goes, whether it is a tag team, whether it is a solo career, whether they're going back to NXT, whether they're just building their name up, or whether they're just a handyman to have on the roster, somebody that, you know, does their job and enjoys to do their job for WWE wherever they need them to be. I think it works a lot better in their favor that way.
Well, you know, one thing too, Arsene, and I want to look at this another way too. And again, I feel very fortunate for, and you brought up, I mean, how a lot of some people, or I won't say a lot of, but some people have made likenesses to the idea of past incarnations of the NW or the LWO. But you know, something I find interesting, which I find a very welcome breath of fresh air. We saw it last night on Raw. The idea you can have Wilde and Del Toro. You can also have Dragon Lee and Rey Mysterio. One of the things I really do like about what they're doing right now with the LWO is the idea that they're giving them the opportunity to mix things up. And I mean, again, seeing all these different components, Dragon Lee is very quickly becoming one of those individuals that fans want to follow, just like Penta. But imagine what it would be like if you gave them the opportunity to let one of or both of really kind of be able to sit under the learning tree that is a Rey Mysterio. it could be a huge benefit for Wild and Del Toro. I mean, again, it's one of those things when you sit there and you look at it, there's a lot of things. And again, thank you, WWE, for giving us a lot of things as a fan. Forget being, as they say, the smart fan. There's a lot of things that we have that are the what if. And having those really, as a lot of our past guests have said, it really allows us to suspend disbelief. And I can't remember who exactly said it, but it was something to the event of let wrestling be wrestling. Don't micromanage everything. Don't think, well, this and this and this and this. No. Enjoy pro wrestling for what it is. That's what got us hooked to it. And that's what should keep a lot of people hooked to it. So at this point, and again, I just want to throw this again, sorry, I got to bring him back up. I know Susie Haas is going to get upset with me. Sorry. Right now, looking at John Cena's Twitter account, he is being followed by 971,000 people. His actual follower count is 14.4 million. Talk about an impact. It's as simple as that. Let's go ahead here. And again, here's the crazy thing, Arson. We've been live now for 46 minutes. We're going to be joined by Eddie Page here in hour number 2, which surprisingly enough is only about 20 minutes away. So, I mean, we've had 2 major topics, and there are still plenty of big-time topics here. So let's go ahead. Let's fire it up.
Well, if I could just shave a little bit of time off just mentioning something. Just that before we throw this out there.
Okay, Arson. I mean, you've shown the belt 9 times. You want to put it up there one more time for 10, that's fine. Just so everybody can have seen your title.
If you got it, you flaunt it, okay? And I won this baby. But no, I just wanted to make a note of why I think that they did purchase Lucha Underground. And it's a very small thread, and it's probably not leading to anything. But for those of you that haven't seen it, I recommend looking it up when you get the chance. The recent escapades of one Chad Gable. Watch the latest one. Tell me Dario Cueto didn't make Cesar Duran. I don't want to call him by the dead name right now. But tell me Cesar Duran did not make that with the way that the cinematography and just the overall presentation of it. If we could get Lucha Underground with the same production team and the same level of care and effort, but just make it kind of its own thing, separate, not separate to a degree. Obviously you can send people down there, play it back. If we could bring that back, I think that's a whole other ballpark for so many characters in the WWE, especially because aside from the Undertaker, there's very few instances where certain characters that can have a little bit of absurdity to the nature of their, gimmick can thrive outside of that. So with something like that in their back pocket to be able to send people to, or at least just to be able to have to work with, I think they stand more to gain from it. But that's enough talking about that. We could go on and on.
I'm changing gears here for a minute. And I know I said I was going to bring this up earlier on, and thankfully, my wonderful world of Wi-Fi has finally cooperated. I went to, we talked about our good friend DJ Money, and we talked about the idea of how his business, Bryant Hill, shopbryanthill.com, has a lot of information here. But looking at some of the things that were mentioned in here yesterday, it was the idea of where they are talking about the merger with Sachs and Neiman Marcus. And one of the things they talk about here was the idea of it gives why the merger goes there. It allows the opportunity for more high-end clientele to purchase their product. Brings forth a new era of luxury grooming products, a chance to set a new standard, and it says here that it allows them to finalize retail expansion, They're actively working to ensure that their products will be sold in Neiman Marcus locations nationwide, with the possibility of selling them at Saks Fifth Avenue. Be allowed to be able to produce some more high-end products, and also to allow them to expand their digital presence. So again, shopbryanthill.org. .com. Sorry, one more time. Shopbryanthill.com. Bryant Hill. Their slogan is "Great products for great people." Make it a point to check them out. They got a lot of great items available, and make it a point to check them out. On the Wrestle Talk podcast sent you. All right. To quote the one of my favorite movies in the all time, let's get moving right along and continue on with our next High Spots question. All right, let's see what our next question is. We've talked Lucha Underground. We've talked WWE. Okay, this is one that came up it came up during our meeting today. According to reports, and this is confirmed by the National Wrestling Alliance, Natalya is set to compete at the 2025 NWA Crockett Cup. What are your thoughts? Arsen, it's yours, my friend.
I'll be honest, not to say that I'm not appreciative of it, but like, nice. Like, I don't really have much of a reaction other than sweet. All right, let's see where this goes. Because WWE's just been kind of kicking it right now, and in terms of like everything that they're doing. I mean, like I said, I've already mentioned this probably 100 times on the show by now, and I've only been on like 5. But the fact that Omos, won a GHC heavyweight tag. I mean, he vacated it, but like he won a championship in another company. We've had people at Bloodsport. We're seeing TNA championships defended on NXT television and vice versa. So the idea that, and I'm just going to pull this back up here, that our girl Natty might be able to go all the way in something as prestigious as the NWA Crockett Cup. Because let's be honest, that's a big fish in a small pond, and that's not underselling NWA. That's selling the size of Natty in this competition.
Well, one thing there, and again, I'm going to do a little more research because the Crockett Cup is actually more of a tag team avenue. For those that are true wrestling purists, won by the likes of the teams like Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, the Road Warriors, among others. But again, and I'm just going to say it, would you have imagined, even at the start of the decade, 5 years ago, that you would have said that WWE performers have been in TNA? Would you say that you would have seen them in places like New Japan? Would you say that you could have seen them in the NWA? Would you have imagined that another promotion's championships, not just in NXT, but being shown on WWE mainstream broadcasts, like the Royal Rumble, for example?
No. I would not have anticipated that in any way, shape, or form. And to see somebody like Joe Hendry rolling out with the TNA World Heavyweight Championship with the big response that he got from everybody, like, goodness, especially for me, because I knew Hendry before he even joined TNA. So just be like, if you would have told me like 10 years ago that Joe Hendry would win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship and show up in the Royal Rumble, I would have said, what are you smoking and can I have some? Because it would have been ludicrous. Truly.
Well, you know something, Arsen? I'm going to throw it here. I don't know why, but I just want to throw this out here. Why is it that we say his name and he appears? It's kind of ironic that anytime we hear about saying somebody's name, it might be a snitch or a JSO or a Dr. Dallas Stevens or any number of people. I'm just hoping that we didn't open the box. That's my thing. But when you sit down and look at it, I mean, again, this has a completely different avenue. I'm going to tell you right now, It is no shade, no disrespect to Natty at all. But if you get somebody the opportunity to compete against her at something that's one of the premier events right now of the NWA, that being the NWA Crockett Cup, got to give them props. It's that new mindset of professional wrestling with Triple H at the helm. And I think I got to give them props yet again. Another thing you would never expect, but it's one of those where the WWE is finally making it a point to, I dare say, get with the times. And again, huge shout out to them on that. And another one I want to look at too. This is really a unique situation when you've got promotions like our good friends at NWA New Mexico, Duke City Championship Wrestling. You've got the recently affiliated NWA World League Wrestling. I know we're going to have our guest on here in a few minutes, but to me, I want to see, and actually I'm going to go ahead and take a minute here while we're getting ready for our next question. I want to look and see if they have announced any of the teams thus far for the 2025 Crockett Cup.
Well, and if I can throw an additional question your way, Luke, since we know that this is a team-based performance and we know Natty has entered, who do you see as her tag team partner?
Well, that's the question. All it says is she's scheduled to compete. It doesn't say anything. Does she compete in the tournament? Does it mean that she wrestles in singles action? Because you remember back to things like NWA 73, NWA 74, it always seems like that we get a situation where maybe you're going to get Natty going against, correct me if I'm wrong here. And again, this shows that isn't one of the Page sisters currently the NWA World Women's Champion? I don't remember exactly which one it is.
Ignorance here now.
But like I said, I'm going to look it up. I don't see...
Kenzie Page, you are correct. I just Googled it.
Yes! I knew I had knowledge for a change. But when it comes down to it, I mean, again, could that be something where we see Natalya try to go after the NWA World Women's Championship? Wouldn't that be... And again, I just want to throw this one out here. And again, taking this way out in right field. And again, those that are viewing the program here an hour strong, make sure to be posting your comments. Make sure to be making sure we're not way out in right field here. But imagine what you could say. And I throw it this way for twofold. Remember some of the people, I mean, yeah, it's not the top tier. But remember when Davey Boy Smith Jr. won the Opera Cup? And the idea of how the Hart family wins a prestigious award like that. Imagine what it would be like to have a member of the Hart family, and again, don't know if it's true or not yet, but imagine what it would be like to have a member of the Hart family possibly win an NWA world title. That would be another one of those kind of things that would blow up the internet. I really do.
Level of prestige too, like that is like that's like dedicated to the ancestors, man. Like it's just like dedicated to every last heart that came before her. I would love to see it.
Very true, very true. And like I said, we're going to be joined here by Eddie Page here in just a few moments. But you know something, Arsene? I think we got time before we bring our guest on. We're going to bring one more question up here on the High Spot segment. And then we're going to take, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but we're going to take a trip back on the, for those that are familiar, maybe it's showing my age, we're going to take a trip using the Wayback Machine. I'm going to hold off a minute. Let's go ahead and bring one more question up on High Spots. All right, our last High Spots question of the evening Ooh, I think this is a perfect one. We've been talking about all these different things. Are you looking forward to the Evolve launch tomorrow on Tubi? And again, we got to talk to those guys in IT because they can't type at all. Here's my thought. My answer, no. And here's why. To me, we saw this, and I hope I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Please prove me wrong. Everything to me screams Evolve 2.0 is ECW 2.0. I don't know why, but something in my heart is gnawing at me that this is what happens. Because they're building Evolve. To me, I really didn't get into Evolve until later on. I know there were a lot of great champions that were involved in Evolve. A lot of great wrestling that was involved with Evolve. I mean, I'm a level with you too, man. I really got a chance to grow up grow up in the sport. The besties in the world, the last of all tag team champions. But to me, having Evolve be a feeder system to NXT, no. Let Evolve be their own thing. And to me, will I watch it? Yeah, I mean, it's more TV for a wrestling fan to watch. But to me, as the days have gone on and we get closer and closer, I just can't get behind it. Your thoughts, Arsene?
I just want to say I think that's an interesting stance for you to take as all. Because in my opinion, I am looking forward to it. Maybe I'm just a little blinded to the idea that it won't turn out like ECW 2.0 or that it's what it initially needed to be when they had it in the planning stages. But I think this honestly falls in line with what I was saying about the Lucha Underground stuff, which is like, this is actually a lot more concrete than that, where I think this has the potential to be that. I think it has the potential to try to sort of find its identity, only because it's still up in the air about how it's going to be presented and what it's going to look like. But I really do think this could be something, at least in the terms of development. I mean, we know that like WWE has a system that lends its way up. So this could be a good gateway for a lot of people to maybe not be up to the NXT roster just yet, but get enough exposure and get enough experience to where they need to be. And when I think about Evolve just as a program and a lot of the names that come from it or that I recognize come from it, to just see that the WWE is going to pump money into that as a concept, I think we're going to see something good. And
Arsene, I want to throw this one out here. If you give that as kind of a developmental for NXT, then where does WWE ID fit into this? It's almost like, and again, just thinking about it in retrospect, is the idea that are we building a AAA, AA, single A, and like developmental league for professional wrestling like we would have in like professional baseball?
I would certainly hope so. I think that's a good system to try and get people in place. I think wrestling as it stands now, like especially because I think it's more so that in WWE's case, it's better to have that much stuff under your banner because then you can actually take care of it and check it and see what you can do with it as a whole. And now because they're signing a lot of more stuff for people to do, they can still technically be under their banner, but WWE is willing to play ball to let them go other places that they don't technically own under their banner, you know, like your NWAs, like your TNAs, like your, you know, your Pro Wrestling Novas. So it'll be one of those things where we get to see them, you know, harness their craft on. I swear to God.
I told you I was going to do it.
Screen and choke you. Just I was waiting for it, and I didn't expect it. But to my point, I think this has the opportunity to at least give them a chance to, I don't know, I guess have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with these people. And, hopefully this is more just looking at it on a technical side, but give some people more opportunities to work, I guess. I can think of plenty of people out there that may not have as much in terms of their ability to deliver in the ring, but I think there's a lot of people out there, especially in like their experience in wrestling, that can lend themselves to something like that, where maybe we're not going to see them backstage at SummerSlam, but that's, you get one more before this show is over. But that we get eventually, I can't even focus now. I lose my train of thought. But that, in short, I think this is a good thing, and I only have the utmost anticipation for it. And on a completely different note, it's on Tubi. And I'll be honest, Tubi for me is amazing. I love being able to know that I don't need a special Tubi account. They have ridiculous amount of shows and movies that I absolutely care for. Just finished Denji Sentai Mega Ranger. Absolutely recommend it to anybody who likes tokusatsu, but we're not here to talk about that. But to know that I'm going to be able to get quality wrestling on a thing like Tubi for free, and all I have to do is wait for the ads to end, and even then you only get them halfway through the program. That's a win-win for me personally, and I look forward to it, because for me as a contrarian, I'm very sparse in a lot of my mainstream wrestling. It's not that I don't like it, it's not that I don't hate it, because it is popular, although occasionally I will go the opposite direction when people go right, but it's more that I'm going to hear about this stuff anyways. So it's one of those things where, as a collective, the conscience in wrestling, I'm able to hear about your WWEs, hear about your AEWs. I personally keep up with MLW and New Japan because not as many people are talking about them. And for something especially like this, I hope that it's a gateway for new talent, that we get to spotlight some people that we've never heard of before, or see some wrestling that we've never heard of before. And for me,
wait a minute, you said see people we have seen before?
Last one. That's it. You're done. You're cut off. I'm cutting you off. That's it.
Well, something I'm saying, I'm going to throw this out here. Number one, I was proud of you because it gives you an opportunity to look at other talent. You didn't say that it would give you a chance to see other talent. But speaking of which, I went back here and I looked at the NWA affiliates. And you look at it. NWA Midwest, Exodus Pro Wrestling, NWA Southeast with Joe Kazana Promotions, NWA Crossfire, NWA Chicago, NWA World League, NWA Texas, and NWA New Mexico. NWA is gaining some ground here. Now, I said, and we're going to be joined here in just a few minutes. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, Arsene, and I know you're back. You've been kind of keeping an eye on the green room, making sure everybody's there. I do believe our guest is in the green room, correct? All right. Before we go any farther, I told you I wanted to get back and put it this way. Go to the Wayback Machine here for just a minute.
Did you get it situated?
It's something that we haven't had the opportunity to see on the program for a long time. So it's time. We're going to go ahead and we're going to bring something back. The timeless classic here tonight on the Wrestle Talk podcast. What we're going to do real quick is we're going to bring forward something I don't think you've ever been a part of, Arsene. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, before our next featured guest, I want to go ahead and bring up to you a timeless classic for those that are the long-term listeners and viewers of the Wrestle Talk podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the return of the Shoot and Shout segment right here on the Wrestle Talk podcast. So, Mr. Arsene, if you'd be so kind, let's go ahead and hit that Shoot and Shout music. This is not good, Arsene. You've got your microphone turned off, and the Shoot and Shout music is not there. Well, that's okay. While our scene's looking for the music, looking for the introduction, to give you the idea, the shoot and shout segment gives you an opportunity to kind of vent what's on your mind. It kind of gives you an opportunity to see a little bit more behind what makes up your host of the Wrestle Talk podcast. And our scene, you look like you didn't find it.
I may have, and I apologize because it was labeled differently. So I'm hoping I'm clicking the right thing here. But if we let's cue that up a little bit better. But the return of the Wrestle Talk podcast shoot and shout segment. Okay.
Well, you know something? I'm just going to say right now, you know what's there. The Wrestle Talk faithful know what's there. I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know where yours is going to go. My shoot and shout this week is real simple. And again, I think I said it earlier on. Do me a favor. We're all wrestling fans. Don't go out and spoil things for people. Let people have that opportunity to enjoy wrestling in a way that they are familiar with. Let them have the opportunity to be the wrestling fan. And again, I know there's a lot of promotions that, I mean, again, we hear things, we see things, but let us be fans. I mean, you see behind me, all these things that I've accumulated over the years. It's because I'm a fan of pro wrestling. Not only am I involved, but I enjoy pro wrestling. Let fans be fans. Mine's as simple as that. Arsene, you're shoot and shout.
Thank you, Skywalker. I feel like I got a couple. I got a little bit of everything for this shoot and shout segment, at least in regards to the Elimination Chamber. And you can't do this when I'm in that. Okay, for starters, that. But when it comes to, you know, wrestling fans as a whole, and it's because I know at the end of the day, especially now with the advent of the internet and, you know, smart marks thinking that they know everything about anything when it comes to professional wrestling and having an opinion because we all have one. I get that. But there is a significantly vocal majority of people out there that somehow think because they predict things in wrestling that makes it bad. And I'm here to say this to the people who don't get it. If you're able to get it, like if you're able to figure it out, or if, oh, it's so obvious that they were going to do that, it's almost like that was the intention. It's almost like they did it that way because they knew you would think that way. If things line up in wrestling, it's because they line up. Because the people who want to sit there and act, well, like, oh, it was obvious that Cena was going to turn heel. Therefore, Elimination Chamber was bad. Never mind the fact that the wrestling was on point, the storyline was there, and it was amazing. I feel like they're of the opinion that because it didn't surprise me, because I predicted it, because they put the breadcrumbs there for me to figure it out, it's bad automatically. Not minding the fact, and I'm getting very heated about this, not minding the fact that if they did the opposite, they'd be bitching about a completely different thing, which is that, oh, I didn't see the breadcrumbs. Who could have possibly have guessed this? A swerve for the sake of a swerve because we're idiots and we think we know how this shit works? No, of course not. That couldn't happen. Anyways, I need to pull it back. My family is trying to sleep right now. But all in all, by the by, ladies and gentlemen, if you're able to guess it, it's probably because they intended for you to guess it. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you smarter. And it certainly doesn't mean you should be booking the show. So if you could do us all a favor and let the people like me who didn't see it coming or weren't expecting it to happen, if you could just do us all a favor and collectively shut the fuck up, we could all go back to enjoying wrestling. Shoot and shout.
And now you've taken part in another piece of Wrestle Talk podcast history. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, that concludes High Spots. That concludes the shoot and shout segment here. And I only made our scene break once during shoot and shout, so that's not too bad. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I told you earlier on here, and it's kind of cool that we're almost right on time here. I'm watching the timer here in the backstage area, and we are right on time. And I'm going to tell you right now, first off, I want to give a shout out to our broadcast colleague, the originator of the Wrestle Talk podcast, the one, the only Nightmare Jones, Joe Lance, because he was a man who's helped to set up this interview. And I'm going to tell you right now, tonight gives me an opportunity. As I said in the shoot and chat, I'm not only involved with professional wrestling, but I'm also a professional wrestling fan. And our guest tonight is going to give me an opportunity. And one of the things I've always said to my broadcast colleague, Gabriel Arsene, is the idea of there are times when you learn so much about the wrestling industry and you don't know it's going to happen. You can learn from anybody, anywhere, anytime because of different promotions, different walks of life when it comes to professional wrestling or life in general. And I want to go ahead. I don't want to give a huge, long introduction, but I do feel that tonight's interview is going to be one for the memory books, one for the highlight reel, if you want to go that route. So, ladies and gentlemen of the Wrestle Talk podcast, it is our esteemed honor and privilege to be joined by the one, the only Eddie Page, right here tonight on the Wrestle Talk podcast. So, at this point, Arsene, if you can hit some possible intro music.
What's up?
Have to cut that short.
Hey, I was rocking. I was jamming, man.
Well, Eddie, I'm going to tell you this right now. And I just want to, and again, this is probably the first time you've ever heard the end of the interview before the beginning of the interview. Later on in the interview, I want to offer you a challenge to where we can play that music again, because I think it's the first time in Wrestle Talk podcast history that both the guests and both the hosts were kind of jamming out, and it takes a lot to get me going, but that music just got me fired up, and I got to tell you, we got to hear some more of that.
We didn't plan it. It just was the vibe. That's the best.
Very true, very true. And again, as my broadcast colleagues, I want to welcome you here to the program tonight. One of the things that makes the Wrestle Talk podcast stand out is we do ask a wide variety of questions. We ask the standard questions, and then we ask the outside the box, outside the norm questions. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw one out here. I don't know. I know you were in the backstage area a few minutes ago, and we were talking about professional wrestling and how in 2025, and it's been that way for many a year now, that professional wrestling fans think that they know everything when it comes to pro wrestling. My question to you, Eddie, is do you feel that professional wrestling fans know too much about pro wrestling, or do they need to kind of back off and let professional wrestling be what we've all grown accustomed to?
I think some of it is WWE's own doing because they kind of peeled it back. So then fans see things like LFG. I don't know if you guys have watched it, but they see things like that. So they feel like, aha, that's how they do it. And they think that because I heard the part where you said they predict it, so then that makes them feel like they know it and they should predict it and the show is not good. I don't know where that really turned like that to where people entirely took this negative approach to it. Like it's like as soon as you see it, before you see it, even you hear a rumor on Facebook, you're like, yep, this sucks. And I'm like, but it might play out much better than that. So I don't know.
Well, Eddie, I want to say right now, thank you, because that's one of the things with Wrestle Talk podcast. You're free to say what you feel, and being able to kind of give that varying opinion. And again, it's very much a breath of fresh air. And I want to say thank you for sharing that. Now, let's go back to that traditional wrestling interview. Yeah, first thing to look at here is I know you've been involved with pro wrestling for several years now.
For a long time.
And my question is this. When you were growing up, who would you say, if there was one wrestler that motivated you to get inside the fame squared circle, that 20 by 20 ring that we all as professional wrestlers have been fortunate enough to be in, who would you say is that one wrestler that made you, Eddie Page, realize that professional wrestling was the avenue for you?
I'm gonna have to say Razor Ramon. I remember 1995. I was 5, so I remember seeing him, and he was so cool, and everything about him. He got the attention, and how he spoke. I was just like, I want to do that, and so that was the first wrestler that I attached on to like that, and then the one that really took it over, Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is something.
Well, you know something, Eddie? You just saw it. My broadcast colleague, he's the Warriors Heart champion. He's shown that belt 15 times. He wants everybody to see it. And
I've
sorry, you've
seen
seen
it.
the on-running joke here. Hey, haha, I told you, Arsene, it's going to catch on here. You're going to lose it before the end of the show. That's my plan. Now, here's what's up. My question here is this. You talk about the idea of first growing up and seeing the likes of a Razor Ramon, a Chris Jericho, right there, kind of in that attitude era into more of the ruthless aggression era. My question to you is this. What background did you have? I mean, again, you followed wrestling. You're a fan. That's one of the reasons why professional wrestling is what it is today, because we've all been fans at one point or another. Can you give us a little bit of a background as to what did you do when you realized this is what I want to do? I remember hearing, now I'm going to have to try to remember what video I was watching. It was Shawn Michaels saying that at 12 years old, that's what I want to do with my life. When you get to that point, when you get to high school, you get to the college age, and you decide you're going to make that journey into pro wrestling, what did you do to get yourself prepared for the world of pro wrestling?
Something that a lot of people don't know, and if anyone watches this and they know me, it might make more sense. But from middle school all the way until I took drama class, I did plays, I took acting, because I knew I was always able to speak, but I was like, if I can learn how to turn this into a persona and how to really act and use the facial expressions and different things like that, I knew I could, anywhere that I may lack, that area would make up for it. So I did that from 7th grade all the way through senior year. I was a part of a drama club, something. I was always acting, always.
Well, you know, Eddie, I want to throw this out here. And again, we talk about how Cody Rhodes talked about in the WWE about how he went out to LA and took acting classes, and how the American Dream Dusty Rhodes pawned his watch in order to be able to pay for Cody Rhodes to have that opportunity. I want to break the fourth wall here for a minute. And Arsene, you're going to laugh. I'm going to warn you. There's a lot of times when you can dive into the world of a persona. But I'm gonna tell you something. Do you want to know one of the first things that really got me hooked into the world of pro wrestling? Like our guest, I was very active in my high school years in drama. Love drama. Love it, love it, love it. Wish I could be more involved with it to this day.
Right.
I was in a musical my senior year in high school. It was basically an offshoot of Yankee Doodle Dandy. It's called George M. And for those that are familiar with the life of George M. Cohan, or the idea of like the Yankee Doodle Dandy, at one point there was a scene of, and again, I'm just stating what the background story was. It was George Cohan's character and his father were two Irish Americans, and they were in a local watering hole, and they started talking about their heritage in song. And near the end of the song, they got into a shoving match. And I had been training for wrestling a couple years at the time. And we made the decision. We called an audible ourselves. And I told the lead, whatever you do, just when you shove me that last time, get under my armpits. I'll take care of everything else. Don't tell the director. Don't tell anybody on staff. He shoves me. I go about 4 feet in the air. Boom. Big giant thud. And it was loud. And the director comes up, starts yelling at the lead, thought I was broken in 9 pieces. And she turns around to start yelling back at the lead. Back when I was a lot lighter than I am now, I did a kip up and said, great, let's do it again. And right then and there, I knew exactly, like you said, Eddie, hooked him in, just brought him in. And again, it's a great piece of advice for those that want to get into the world of pro wrestling. It's not all physical. You got to get your
Yeah.
mind in the game too.
That's something I was glad I had when I first came, because I was in the tag team, the Wild Cards, and I always felt like my partner is phenomenal in the ring. Like, I always felt like he was leagues above me. Even though people always said, it's not that far off, but that's how I felt. So I felt like to myself, what can I do to set me on his level if I can't reach it in ring? And it was my persona. I know that I made myself a memorable person because I had to do it one way or another. So it was my persona.
Well, Eddie, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn things over to my broadcast partner here in just a moment. I've had the opportunity to see a lot of wrestlers inside the ring. I've had an opportunity to see footage of yours, and I want to again. We talked earlier about sharing the knowledge about the love of professional wrestling, and a lot of the things that you do remind me of an individual here in the greater St. Louis area that I would liken a lot of your ability to. A gentleman by the name of Shorty Biggs. I know it may not necessarily be a name that you're familiar with, but if you get a chance, you need to get online, because a lot of what I think what Shorty Biggs does is a lot of what I've seen out of Eddie Page. The idea of somebody who can go out there, he can connect with his fans, he can get a little bit eccentric, can get a little bit animated.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, you can always go out there and you're going to get your money's worth anytime you see Eddie Page step inside the ring. And again, I'll make it a point that our broadcast colleague, Joe Lance, gets you some info. Again, just want to share it to you. I mean, again, a lot of your things, from what I've seen, I've grown very quickly, grown attached to your ability inside the squared circle. And I want to go ahead and throw things over to my broadcast colleague here. We've got Eddie Page here on the Wrestle Talk podcast, an interview that a lot of people have been looking forward to. So, Arsene, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Well, thank you, Skywalker. Well, I'd like to take the opportunity, Eddie. You had mentioned, our colleague here, Joe Lance, Nightmare Jones. Just for the uninitiated, how did you two meet? I mean, was this just like did you guys meet like at a show? Were you friends prior to that?
I know I met him in West Virginia, and I'm trying to decide if I met him at a wrestling show or if I met him at the Robbie Page training facility. I met him in that connection, though, like Robbie Page and those are like people. So it might have been a show or it might have been at the training center, but I've known him for quite a while. I've known Joe, actually.
And you still
Yeah. Oh
and you
my
still
God.
talk about him to this day, Eddie. That takes some heart right there.
No, I remember him. You know what it is about Joe, though? I would say very early in my career, he was one of the first people that made me feel like we might do something. Because he showed very early on that he was a fan of what we were doing, even if we weren't entirely good yet. He still seemed to be a fan of what we were doing. He always was there. He always gave us a word about our match, whether he was the ref or he just watched it. So I always appreciate people like that.
I definitely think it contributes to it. I mean, we all think about having fans, but it helps to have a friend who is also a fan of your work.
Oh, yeah.
I think it pushes you to a certain level.
Oh,
Now, you had mentioned personas earlier, and obviously as wrestling fans, we can list plenty of people that inspire us in terms of like the presentation, the way they, move in the ring, the way they look, the way they talk. But not often are people thought about like outside of the wrestling bubble. Do you take any inspiration from anything outside, like movies, video games? And if so, do you have a specific example? Like me personally, I I like to actually took the name Arsene from I don't know if you're familiar with the I forget who makes it, but Atlas, I believe. But they Persona series, there's a character. They have it's sort of like an alter ego that they summon, and his name's Arsene, and it's based off of Lupin Arsene. It's a whole thing, but
Yeah.
to talk your ear off about it. But do you have any things that you pull from specifically? Any like characters or moments or movements or anything?
I would say if there was someone outside of wrestling that I've watched and I've tried to be Jim Carrey, and not for his comedic, but he's just very, when he gets into something, he's really into it.
It's
He fully,
facials.
his facial expressions. And that's something that I noticed. And so that is someone that I can say I have taken the idea of how to take a persona and make it you. When you see him playing these characters, you almost forget it's Jim Carrey. That's what I wanted. I didn't want you to see Tyler Nimmons. I wanted you to see Eddie Page. And so Jim Carrey for sure.
Now, just a curveball because you brought him up. Favorite Jim Carrey movie?
Oh, see, this one's not fair. Yes, there's so many. If I had to say real quick, The Mask, but I could say Liar Liar. I could say Me, Myself, and Irene, Cable Guy, Truman. Like, there's so many. That's not even Bruce Almighty. Like, we could have a half hour talking about Jim Carrey movies.
Well, I want to just take an opportunity to mention one of his more recent works, Sonic 3. Just
Phenomenal.
it's so good. Like I
Yeah, I
can't
was in
stress
the
the fact that
theater.
I forget I'm watching. It's like he's the only man I know that can play two characters that can reference the fact that they looked exactly like each other and are being played by the same actor, but you forget that the actor is playing both characters. Like it's
You
insanity.
believed it was two different people, right? And that's
Absolutely.
me. Like, I got myself to where the fans see me on show, so it's like, oh, it's Eddie. But then when you see me after the show, I'm more like this. During the show, I'm like, who are you? And then after, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you for coming so much. So, like, they seen the difference. And that's what I wanted you to see was when I'm turned on, I'm turned on. Don't come to me asking for that nice guy stuff because that's not who I am right now. And that's just what I really wanted to be.
I can't help but be reminded of I believe it was in one of the Dark Side of the Rings episodes where they mentioned Bruiser Brody about how it was Frank Goodish, and it was like he would be in the car with his wife, and she was like, I would see him, and then as soon as he walked out the door, he'd let his hair down, and then there was Brody. And I think about that sort of flip or switch that we flip in wrestling when it
It's
comes to
really
our
like
personas and who
that.
we are.
It's really like that. Like, I think the last moments that you're really yourself is maybe when you're talking about it and putting it together because you're remembering it for yourself. But right after that, as soon as you get into that zone, like even backstage, like you start looking at the guys and their character. Like, you're like, oh, there goes that guy. Who does he think? Like, and I think it's where you start talking yourself into this persona and everything. Not you don't get disrespectful. You don't really punch somebody because oh I'm a good guy and he's but I do think you have to almost step into a different universe. Because if you don't, you have to think about it. If you're yourself when you walk through that curtain, would you really punch him in the face? But if you
I
step
certainly
in,
hope not.
but Eddie Page will really punch you in the face. So that's why you have to step into a different. That's the difference between performers. Look at who's on the main roster and stuff like that. You see the different levels of who really believes who they are and who's just kind of going out there collecting a check. I think there's two differences in performers.
Absolutely. Now, as somebody who is still relatively fresh to the wrestling industry myself, I always like to try and ask any advice that I can get from people. So, from somebody who's learning to somebody who has been learning, what was the biggest piece of advice that stuck with you when you got into the wrestling business, and why?
I would say, and maybe some other people could also identify. I think at first, when you first get in and guys try to give you advice and stuff, you have this mind frame of, oh, what is he talking about? I'm fantastic. You know what I mean? And so you feel like, yeah, I had the best match, and it's not true, but you feel like that. But I will never forget 2014, I worked Rhino. And I think Rhino heard me. I was over with by the ring talking to some of the guys, and I was like, "Oh, when he gores me, I'm gonna backflip. I'm gonna backflip out of the gore. I'm gonna do it. I swear." And then Rhino, he's like, "Hey, let's talk about this." And he says, "Let me ask you a question. What is you backflipping out of it? What does it do? What does it do for it? The move? What if you backflip and kick me in the head? What if you backflip and no one even understands that you took the gore because you took it different than everyone else has the past 20 years?" And it made me really think about everything you do in the ring, there should be a reason for it. You shouldn't just do it because you can. Because at the time, I could moonsault and all that stuff. So I felt like at the time, that was my biggest match to date. So I was like, this is my time to show off and show everyone what I can do. And then him telling me there's a reason for everything. And he was one of those names. It was my first name working one on one. We had worked with Sanjay Dutt as a tag team, but it was my first one on one with a name. And he was the guy that if I had an idea, like we built our match together, if I had an idea, he didn't just say, "No, I'm not doing that." He would say, "We're not going to do that, and here's why." And so coming through just putting the match together, I learned so much. Because sometimes when you're shot down by these guys, it makes you think, "Oh, does he think I don't have good ideas?" But it's not that. It doesn't make sense. So why are you doing that? And that's the biggest thing I got from Rhino. I'm sorry that turned into such a long answer.
No, absolutely. It's a 2-hour show, dude. Like we're
Yeah.
always here
Well,
for these answers.
Arsene, I want to jump in here a minute. And again, I'm just going to flat out level with you, Eddie. Thank you. Because you've shown right here on the Wrestle Talk podcast, you've shown something that we always talk about all the time. Professional wrestling has a component of storytelling. It has a component of athleticism. It has a component of countless things. Everything is done for a reason. You don't go out there just because you can do 37 backflips and handsprings and I can do 9 cartwheels and I can light 7 tables on fire
Yes.
and get right back up and walk away. Everything has a reason. And a guy who's been around pro wrestling for as long as I've been, I'm gonna tell you right now, that is a lesson that a lot of professional wrestlers need to learn. Is there's a time and a place for the things that you do.
I'm going to
And
say
and again,
something very controversial right here live on your podcast. I cannot stand all elite wrestling. I think it is very, very bad. Do they have talented performers? Yes. They have some of the best in the world. I'm not going to take away from their talent. But when you're doing I watched somebody take a Canadian destroyer, bang, he lands on his feet, super kick, 1, 2, kick out. Right there, I was like, you just killed 2 moves in 1 shot.
mhm.
That's why I don't like it. Because
You know something, Eddie? Thank you. Because again, another thing to look at it, and this is the old guy coming out in me, but I remember when I first started watching wrestling when I was a young kid, the moves to me, and it's ironic you mentioned one of them, the super kick. I remember back in the days of Chris Adams. Chris Adams hit that super kick, you were done. End of
Done.
discussion. That was it. Now everybody has to seem to kick a DDT, kick Snake Roberts. Drop your
I was
head.
gonna say you beat me to it there, Roberts. I was just about to say that the DDT. It's like, remember when that was it? That was just the one DDT, the regular kind. Now it's like Randy hits a rope hung DDT, and that gets it 2. And I'm like, I want anybody to take that bump, myself included, because I've never taken a bump so far yet. That I'm like, I want anybody to get their neck whiplashed as hard as you can during a rope hung DDT and see if you can get your shoulders up at 2. Try it.
It's the evolution of wrestling, because let's even take it back to the Attitude Era. At one time, the Swanton Bomb was incredible. And now we're doing backwards 450. We're doing 4.5s or whatever, 5.4s, like,
Phoenix
and that's
splashes, red
it keeps
arrows.
it keeps going up and up and up. The frog splash. Eddie hit that frog splash, and we were like, "Good God Almighty, look at the air!" Now you have to do 3 moonsaults in one jump. So I just think it kind of goes with it, with the evolution of wrestling. I doesn't mean I like it. I think WWE has a good mixture of new and classic. I think they allow the guys of new to work their style, but it still has reins on it. Like, I feel like AEW, they have no agent on their match. I feel like it's an independent pro wrestling. 2 wrestlers got together and said, let's go out there and do this, this, and this. You can do a backflip, right? Okay, you're going to do a backflip. And like, it's, yeah, that's just me. And maybe that's the old head in me. Maybe.
No, I mean, as somebody, as the young line of with the old soul resident of the Wrestle Talk podcast, I can definitely understand where both of you guys are coming from. Because for me, I remember being that kid where I would be playing stuff like your Fire Pro Wrestling or your WWE Shut Your Mouth, and I would make my character, and it was like you would always give them all the crazy, stupid moves. It's always like flips and kicks and jumps. All this insanity. And then the older I got and the more I watched a lot of older tapes and even a lot of modern wrestling, you can see a lot of, wrestling is cyclical. You're going to see a lot of returning where, obviously we're going to get all of our insane spot fest, but we're also going to get a lot of classic wrestlers. And my favorite examples being Ilya Dragunov and Gunther. And that's because
Those two, shoo, they're so good.
classic. Name any other wrestler that can sell an elbow at like a forearm as big as Ilya does. It's like, think about anybody else trying to pull that move off in 2025. And Ilya is the guy who makes you go, oh no, he's out. He's out. Like that's it.
People don't realize that. That I think, like, yes, you can, like, Austin gives me the stunner. But think about when Vince took it really bad, it lost its cool. But then when Austin Theory takes it and he's jumping 6 feet back, it makes it even that much bigger. So when you have the Ilyas and guys like Dolph Ziggler and Austin Theory, that it makes it look that much better. And I think it helps with me believing what's happening. If you're selling it big, then I believe it was big. If you take a big punch and you just kind of, man, I don't believe that guy hits hard anymore. So that.
Eddie, I mean, again, it seems like you and I have been probably somehow or another connected in a past life because you think a lot like I do. When I first trained to get in the professional wrestling industry many years ago, I learned a handful of things that you have to make sure that your match has. You don't go out there and you go, oh, I got to do this and this and this, and then you do this and this and this. I've never been that way. That's not the way I do things. I remember, and it's going to kind of lead to my next question. I was at an event this past weekend, and I had 2 gentlemen, separate conversations because both men are getting prepared to compete in a last man standing match that's coming in the next coming weeks. And when they come to me, they ask me, you've been around wrestling long enough. What advice do you have? And I just tell them, guys, the biggest thing is learn from the past. Take the time, study the tape, do what's there. Do I know how long their match is going to be? No, I don't. I told him the biggest thing is you can go out there, you can do what you need to do, but there's a way to do what you need to do. Learn from those. And again, I'll level people here. I'm near 50. I'm looking down the road at potentially a three vertebrae fusion in my neck in the
Sure.
different things I've done in the business and things I've done outside the business. You don't need to go out there and do things that a quarter inch takes you from being perfectly fine to never walking again. You don't need to do that stuff. You can
No.
tell a story and do what needs to be done. Now, as I said, there was a question to this. My broadcast colleague is like, what was the greatest piece of information that you ever learned in your career? Here's my question. You've been around wrestling a good amount of time. What would you tell yourself day one, either to do or not do in the world of professional wrestling?
Oh, that is a phenomenal question. I would tell myself to pay attention sooner. And what I mean by that is when I first started, I think I was kind of watching to see who I am better than, even though I wasn't better than anybody starting out. I just was watching to see what was messed up on so that I could prove I'm better than that. Instead, I wish I would have did what I did about halfway through, and that's everything I watched, learn from it. Even if someone did something wrong, learn not to do that, and not in a malicious way, but just be like, "Oh, that wasn't good. Yeah, make sure you don't do that." To myself, that's something I would do, is make sure I take lessons for myself sooner instead of waiting for it to be shoved down my throat. Then after I started paying attention for myself. I wish I would have paid. I thought I was better than what I was from very early on. Very early on, I thought I was great.
Well, you know something, Eddie, when you talk about that, and I'll level with you. I remember when I was first actually getting in the ring back when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, and I thought I was the greatest thing to ever step inside the ring.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
was
I would,
19.
and I know full well that if you could go back and rewind the time and you sit there and say, I'm going to do this and this, and it's like, no, stop. Do what the
Stop.
veterans are suggesting. You'll have a much
Yes.
longer career that way. But
Yeah,
um, one thing I want to look at here, Eddie, is this. You've been very active in the world of professional wrestling. You've been in the ring with countless competitors. My next question is, I know right now that you have things going on in the immediate future. Can you share with the viewers of the Wrestle Talk podcast a little bit of what's on the horizon for Eddie Page?
well, last year, actually, oh my goodness, it's 2025. 23, I started a professional wrestling company here in Florida. And I would say transparency, little rough start, like trying to figure everything out and everything. 24, I did a couple more shows, still trying to smooth things out. So I took the past year, the last show I did was March 24, but the past year I've done so much learning on that side. Like, I think I still have that arrogant thing of, oh, I know wrestling, I can do this. But being a promoter is so much different than being a wrestler. You think because you've been on shows that you get it, but when you start running one and then you have all these personalities and all these requests and everything, you just learn. So I've taken the last year to really learn the craft of a businessman as a promoter. So that, because the wrestling part, I got that. But I'm in talks with something very cool, but I'm not going to speak on it. I'm sorry, I wish I
Mhm.
had it to tell you, but I'm not going to speak on it because it's so in its infancy of talks. So I'm gonna wait for
Mhm.
it. But FWE 2025, we coming back. I put up a little teaser video a couple weeks ago. So it's coming back. I'm trying to do it the right way this time, for sure.
Well, you know one thing, Eddie, and again, speaking as an individual who's been in countless roles, I've been a referee, I've been an announcer, I've been a manager, I've been a competitor, I've been a broadcaster. I mean, there's a lot of things. Sometimes it's better that anticipation, not just the holding it close because it's not set. Because as you well know in professional wrestling, if one person thinks they know what's up, 15 people in a locker room are going to know
Yeah.
instantaneous. It's
And
always a good thing to keep things close.
that's something I've learned from 2024. Like every time I had something going on, I was very excited to tell the roster and everyone, and then stuff would fall through because, well, stuff just falls through. So it can look like you're just blowing smoke, you know?
Mhm.
So I was like, this time, I'm not going to speak on anything until the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And maybe even I proofread it again just to make sure it's correct because I just want to make sure this time that it's right. I've learned so much. I've changed so many things how I'm gonna run it. I just want to be successful because I feel like this is my last opportunity to do anything with wrestling. You know, I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2020, so that was the end of my career, wrestling like in ring. So this is my last shot. It's my last chance. I gotta do it.
Well, you know something, Eddie, and one thing I speak not because of the wear and tear of what's happened to me, but one of the things is I really envy what you've just said because there's a lot of things outside of being inside the professional wrestling ring that people can contribute to professional wrestling. I knew when my in-ring days were done, I couldn't do all the high flying, I couldn't do all the flying around the ring. Um, then I went to refereeing. And when my body said no more really to the refereeing on a regular basis, went to announcing and so on and so forth. That's one of the things as you grow in this industry, there are so many pieces of knowledge you can give to people. And to hear that you're willing to take that next opportunity, I got to give you your props, my friend. That really is something to be very proud of and something to hang your hat on. Speaking of being proud, I want to, I know that Joe's talked with you a few times. One of the things here at the Wrestle Talk podcast, and we want to kind of respectfully pull that curtain back a little bit. Every week that we have a show, we have what's called the world famous Wrestle Talk podcast game show challenge. It's an opportunity for our guests to test their wrestling knowledge against a host of the show. Now, as you have already seen, I'm trying to get you, RC. The man who carries around that piece of hardware, and you're no stranger to holding championship gold. You've done it in the past.
Oh yeah.
He feels because he's got that belt over his shoulder that he has more of a knowledge base than yourself. So, for the benefit of the Wrestle Talk podcast family, and to uphold that proud wrestling tradition that I know that you, Eddie Page, hold so close, would you be willing to accept the challenge of the young lion with the old soul, the man holding that title across his shoulder, Gabriel Arsene, here this evening?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. No, I'm here for it. Let's do it.
All righty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and, Arsene, I think we've got the graphic ready, but at this point, we're going to go ahead and put forth the introduction for this week's installment of the world famous Wrestle Talk podcast game show challenge. Mr. Arsene, if you'd hit the video, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's installment of the world famous Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge. Tonight's contest is scheduled for the best 2 out of 3 falls. Our competitors this evening are the one, the only Eddie Page, and the young lion with the old soul, Gabriel Arsene. Now, gentlemen, in a few minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you information about 3 famous professional wrestling personalities. When you think you know the answer, all you got to do is shout out your answer. You don't have one guess. You can shout out as many guesses as you want. The first person to get 2 out of 3 falls will win tonight's contest. Mr. Page, are you familiar with the rules?
I'm familiar.
All righty, Mr. Arsene. I know you're ready, but I have to ask you because if not, you'll throw a temper tantrum. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
All right. Now, very early on in the interview, you made reference, Mr. Page, to a man who influenced what makes Eddie Page, that being Lionheart, the king of the world, the man of 1,004 holes, Le Champion, the Ocho, the Nueve, the one, the only Chris Jericho. Now, for tonight's category, it is going to be famous Canadian wrestlers.
Oh.
I will give you information about 3 famous wrestlers who call Canada home. When you think you know the answer, shout it out.
Okay.
Are you ready, gentlemen?
Let's go.
All righty, here we go with question number 1. This individual is a former Intercontinental and United States champion in the WWE.
Chris
Most
Benoit.
recent.
Chris Benoit.
No.
Ah.
Most recently, this individual has been seen. No.
Wait, he's not a U.S. champion. Kevin Owens.
No. This individual has been seen alongside a member of his family in the recent agreement between NXT and TNA. Name him.
Oh my gosh. I'm sitting here thinking everybody that's been.
Hold on. Wait, okay. NXT and TNA. Who? Okay, it had to be a.
He's been seen next to.
The Pillman's kid.
No.
Oh.
NXT and okay, hold on. I'm like actually,
He is okay. I'm going to give you another clue. He is the originator of the honky donka meter.
The honky who?
The honky donka meter.
Honky Donk.
He is also the originator of the Cobra.
Oh, Santino Marella.
Santino Marella.
Within a matter of seconds, the first fall goes to Gabriel Arsene. The correct
I
answer.
forgot he was Canadian.
I did too because of the Italian thing. Yeah, man.
WWE has completely warped my interpretation of people and their ethnicities.
yeah.
All right, Jinder Mahal is Italian, but he's Indian, and then Santino Marella is Canadian, but he's also Italian. I'm lost. Okay.
All right, so now we've got one. Are you ready for the second fall, gentlemen?
Let's hear it.
Let's do it.
This individual has been a WWE Tag Team Champion and United States Champion. Most recently, this individual has been known for her tag team and her marriage to Matt Cardona. Name her.
Chelsea Green.
The second fall goes to Gabriel Arsene. It was Chelsea Green.
See, what's funny
Now,
is you phrased the question perfectly because I was thinking of a guy at first.
Yeah, I was
And then you
too.
said, and it's like I had that moment where I was like, "Oh, that's right. Women have IC and US titles
Yes,
now." So
I
like,
forgot.
I think about
Got to be paying attention, my friends. We still have one more fall. And now, Eddie, I'm going to level with you. If our team wins 3 falls and sweeps you tonight, I'm never going to hear the end of it. I don't hear the end of it anyway, but can you promise me you can win this third fall?
Let's hear it. Let's do it.
All righty, Arsene, are you ready?
I'm buckled up.
All righty, here we go. This individual spent time during his career in the AWA, WWF, and WCW.
Bret Hart.
No. He held championships in all three promotions. Most notably was the AWA World Championship and the WWF Tag Team Championship with Tito Santana.
Oh my gosh. I can see him.
Tito Santana.
What is his freaking name? Oh my gosh.
He
This
was
is
also known for a very large button that he wore on his ring jacket with the phrase, "Yes, I am a model."
Rick Martel.
The third fall goes to Eddie Page, but by a result of 2-1, the winner of tonight's Wrestle Talk Podcast
my
Game Show
God.
Challenge is the one, the only, the young lion with the old soul, Gabriel Arsene.
I want a rematch, brother.
You know something? I'm going to throw it out here. And Arsene, I just want to level with you. I've never, in all my years being on the podcast, I've never had someone invoke a rematch clause. Would you be up to staying with the category for a rematch right here, right now?
I've never been one to shy away at Skywalker. You got your rematch.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a rematch here of the Game Show Challenge. Again, same category. I'm going to throw 3 more professional wrestling personalities out there. Okay, here we go. Question number 1. This individual is a WWE Hall of Famer. He is known for many contributions that he made to the WWF, WWE during his career in sports entertainment. He is also known as the first Intercontinental Champion.
Pat Patterson.
That is correct. The first fall in this one goes to Eddie Page. The last thing I was going to add was many people consider him to be the originator of the Royal Rumble. Gentlemen, question number 2. This individual spent time in the big 3 promotions of our era: the WCW, the WWF, and ECW. He held championship gold in all 3 promotions. He was most well known for being serious while holding 3 titles simultaneously.
Lance Storm.
That is correct.
Yes.
Damn.
Oh, it took me a sec. I was like, "There's no way it's
couldn't
Benoit."
think of his
I'm like, "They're not going to have
name, yeah.
Benoit as an answer." So it took a sec.
So,
I had to think about it.
at this point, as it stands right now, it's 1 fall apiece. Are you ready for the 3rd fall, gentlemen?
I have to do it.
All righty. Here we go. This individual has main evented WrestleMania. This individual has held championships in NXT. This person, no.
Sami Zayn.
Sami Zayn.
Ladies and gentlemen, your winner of the rematch, the one, the only Eddie Page. Sami Zayn is correct. And now, you know what, Arsene? Just because I said so, we need to go ahead and hit that Eddie Page music one more time. So let's make sure you can get it right and play our good friend's music. Can you do that for me?
Ah, it feels so good. Ooh. It's a celebration day.
right, ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah,
the winner of the
doing-
rematch, the one, the only Eddie Page. Eddie,
Oh my gosh.
I got to tell you right now, it's now 1-1. I'm just going to level with you. We're going to have you back on the program sometime soon because we're going to need to have that final third and deciding matchup. You see it in the WWE all the time. You see it in pro wrestling all the time.
It's the rubber match.
Very good. Very good. We got 1-1. We're going to have to make
for
this.
weeks. We can build it up. Advertisement, share. We're going to build this up to a big one.
Very true. Very true. You know, we did have one of these before with, of all people, Nightmare Jones, and Nightmare Jones wasn't able to deliver. He wound up losing in that third match as well. So we're going to see what's up here. It's one match apiece. Eddie, before we let you go, first of all, I want to say on behalf of myself and Gabriel Arcine, we want to thank you for coming on the program tonight,
Of course.
taking some time out of your very busy schedule to join us here and let people see what Eddie Page is all about. For those that want to know more about you, or if they want to see you at upcoming events, I know that you're in very high demand. For people that want to see you or get in contact with you through social media, how can they find out more about the one, the only Eddie Page?
Well, you see right here, Tyler Nimmons. That's my mother's name that she gave to me. But no, that's where you can find me on Facebook. Also NIMMZZ Nims on TikTok, Instagram. Um, Also, Florida Wrestling Empire. Stay tuned to that. Get subscribed, follow, whichever it is on Instagram and Facebook so that you can stay on task. Because soon as we start confirming things, stuff's going to be dropping. I'm going to do a lot of teasing as soon the more that it becomes clear. So definitely get on Florida Wrestling Empire and watch what's happening because it's going to be happening.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it right here from the man himself, Eddie Page. And Eddie, before we let you go, we're going to officially say right now that you are, without question, 100% guaranteed a member of the Wrestle Talk podcast family. You have officially joined into our great big family, and we want to say thank you for coming on the program. And I definitely, and I'm on level with the viewers here, breaking that fourth wall during the interview here tonight. And I know our scene just put it up there as well. We both followed you during the show. And I'm going to tell you right now, for those that have been listening, make it a point, follow him on social media. He's got big things that are going to be taking place real soon. Eddie Page, the one, the only here on the program
One
tonight.
and
Eddie,
only.
thank you for joining us here tonight. And we
Thank
definitely
you.
will
I'll
have you with us
definitely
again
come
soon.
back. I'm definitely coming back, and I'll come back again, and I'll come back again. And if you want to come up with a segment called like Eddie's Page, and I sit there and I ramble about something, hey, I'm here for now. Let me stop trying to get myself employment. You
There's
guys
nothing
have.
wrong with that, Eddie. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, creativity.
Yes.
They say controversy creates cash. In reality, creativity creates cash. And when that's the case, Eddie Page, always creative, always innovative,
Always.
the man himself. Eddie, thank you for joining us here
Thank
on the
you.
program tonight.
Thank you for having me, and I will see you guys very soon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. Eddie Page here on the program. Our scene, top to bottom, a great show as it always is. What'd you take from tonight, my friend?
I just know that I want that run back. Okay. I'm not satisfied until I can win that rubber match, but you know what? It was an overall amazing show. Awesome guest. And I'm always glad to have an opportunity to learn from people. It's as the young lion with the old soul, I think it's my job to remember the people that came before me. And whether it's Eddie Page, whether it's Saleh, whether it's, Joe Dombrowski down the line, the young lion with the old soul's got a lot of people behind him to make sure that he's staying an old soul at heart. So,
well, you know something, our scene again, when it comes down to it, that's one of the things that not only makes you, the young lion with the old soul. That's what makes the Wrestle Talk podcast such a great program, is the idea of all these great fans who keep tuning in each and every week, who keep contributing things to the program. And guys, I got to tell you right now, guys and gals, thank you for helping keep the Wrestle Talk podcast going. It's a long process, but with having the support of the fans, the Wrestle Talk podcast family, having the support of all the great sponsors. Actually, a matter of fact, here, let's go ahead and throw up those sponsors one more time here, Arsene. Without the sponsors, I mean, this program does not go the way that it does each and every week. Retro Zone in Kansas City, Painter's Dream Productions, the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, June 22nd, Sunday. Make it a point to get your tickets. Follow on social media for all those new up-to-date information and new video clips each and every other week. Interstate 70 Sports Media, Little Popeye Designs, home of those great limited edition Wrestle Talk podcast tumblers, and the FWWC, the world's premier fantasy wrestling group, home of the current Warriors Heart Championship, the one, the only Gabriel Arsene. And you know something, Arsene? I got to tell you, tonight was a great show. I want to give a shout out here as a reminder, shopbryanthill.com. Make it a point to show some love to our good friends over at Bryant Hill. A lot of great merchandise, a lot of great things available. They're doing lots of big things, and you can say you knew them here before they made it big. You knew them here, right here on the Wrestle Talk podcast. And also as a reminder, too, I want to throw this out here. I've seen a lot of people lately who've been kind of getting down on themselves. As a reminder, you're never alone in this world. You don't know how things are going to go from year to year, month to month, day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. Always know somebody's there to listen to you, whether it's friends, family. Also, the Wrestle Talk podcast. There's suicide on the bottom of the screen, the suicide and crisis lifeline. Dial 988. They're available 24/7, 365. Broadcast colleague Jeremy Karp makes reference to that each and every time that he takes to the airways. We try to do that as much as we can as well, because again, you're not alone in this world. You've always got somebody watching your back. You've always got somebody willing to listen to you. You've always got somebody who's going to be in your corner. And again, if you ever feel like you need anything, make it a point, reach out to the Wrestle Talk podcast. We're always here. We're always checking social media. And guys, give you an idea, from our understanding, 2 weeks from tonight, right here on the program, Joe Dombrowski from MLW. Could be talking all things MLW.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to talk over you, Luke. It's just I'm excited. I'm very excited. I don't mean to show my hand. I want to always treat all of our guests the same way, but the resident MLW guys a little excited for the guest that we got from MLW. So mark your calendars, folks. Joe Dombrowski, 2 weeks away. Yeah, it's a couple more weeks away. I don't want to get too hyped up. It was March what?
March 18th, 2 weeks from tonight. And you know what? You're going to see him live right here on the Wrestle Talk podcast. Gotcha. You know what? Hold on.
Played this out way too long. Man.
Hold on. You know something? And I know you're going to look at it. I know that you've seen a lot of this tonight. I was waiting to see if you'd actually put that sound effect in there. I really was. I was really hoping you were going to put that sound effect, because I know you've seen this a lot tonight. And now you can't.
Got him.
Thank you.
Got him.
I had to wait for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Wrestle Talk podcast, myself and Gabriel Arsene, want to thank you for tuning in this week. Make it a point to share us to all your friends on all forms of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, you name it. Make it a point to keep in touch with the Wrestle Talk podcast. Make sure to follow us wherever you can. We're always here. We're always bringing you fresh new content. And Arsene, I think as we head out, we want to go ahead. We talk about all of our great sponsors. Before we head out here tonight, we're going to close with that great reminder we talked about before. On Sunday, June 22nd, yours truly, Luke Roberts, among 13 other individuals, will be inducted into the St. Louis Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame. I want to go ahead and say thank you for joining us. And we're going to close this evening with that reminder of the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame taking place on Sunday, June 22nd. Take care, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.